Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I have my 1967 Bell Telephone service truck behind me. This project has been fun in the channel. It's kind of calling it Project Snowball because this thing has really snowballed into quite a bit of a project. And the title of this video is telling of the future and the continuation of Project Snowball, and it is snowballing even more. But as you can see here, I have the bed mounted semi-permanently mounted on the back. It's not fully mounted yet, but I do have it mounted enough that I can drive it. And I got door seals in the thing. If you remember the last time we drove this truck on the channel, it was rattly, it was bouncy because it didn't have a bed on it, and we couldn't really drive it that much. But since I've got the bed and everything mounted on it, I've been able to take it out and put some actual miles on the thing, and it had a little surprise when I got back to the shop. So yeah, as you can see there in that video, unfortunately the oil light is coming on when it gets fully up to temperature, and that oil in this engine gets hot and up to temperature. So that means our little 240 under the hood of this thing is probably getting a little tired, which we kind of knew that when we went into this project, that engine was kind of, it was up in the air whether it was going to be able to stay in there or not. And it is running, it is driving, but that oil light does come on, and I'm pretty sure that light comes on pretty low. So our oil pressure is getting down there when the things get up to temperature. But I have something in the back of my truck here that I just picked up yesterday evening. That might fix our issue. Let's go dig into it. All right, guys, before we get into what's in the bed of my truck behind me here, I wanted to give you a little update on this truck because I have done a little bit of work on it since the last time you've seen it. I have got new door seals in the thing, and unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure the best way or the best ones to get to make these things where the doors shut decent after you put seals in them. It's getting better. I know the longer they sit shut like this, the better it's going to be. It's been about maybe 3 weeks since I put these in. And the driver's side's doing okay. The passenger side is terrible over there. I might have to adjust the striker if it doesn't get better, but right now I'm leaving it alone and leaving that door shut, and maybe those seals will kind of break in and kind of wear in to where you can actually shut the door without slamming the dang thing. I have all the parts we have yet to install are in that box over there. We still have to get a windshield in it. We put new rubbers, gaskets for the windshield, the rear and the front. I got put new wiper seals in here. I want to change out those, and the felts along the edge there for the windows. And I have to do the door panels yet because I was waiting to put those back in until I get the windows all sorted out, and you know, just all the little fiddly stuff that you still have to do. I have a new dash pad to put in it, but I'm not putting that in it until we get the windshield replaced. And I want to do something on the outside of the thing. I have some clear coat stuff, some wipe-on clear coat that I thought about doing, and now I'm kind of up in the air on that. I might be doing spray instead of the wipe-on, just so it's a smoother texture. It's not, the wipe-on stuff isn't exactly perfect, and I have the ability to spray it, so I thought we might try spraying it, but I also might just leave it alone or do the just the general wipe-on patina sauce stuff, and I'm not sure what we're doing there yet. But back here in the bed, I've been doing a little bit of work on the green paint that was on this thing. I don't know if you remember. If I have a picture, I'll show it here so you guys can see the before, because unfortunately I didn't take a good picture of it before I started going to town on this thing. But I did a lot of wet sanding on this door and got the green paint off. You can see some of it there on the edges. It's kind of hard where the rust is showing, where the paint's gone, because if I get at it too hard, it ends up looking like this, you know, and it looks like I burned through the paint when really it's just a rust spot that I burned the rust off of it. So I was trying to keep from doing that, so it's not just a bunch of shiny bare metal that looks like I burned through with a sander. And down here you can see some. This stuff was a little bit stubborn. So it worked really good on this door. There's a little bit here. I started on it up here, and then down here you can see where I haven't worked on it yet, where there's still oxidation. I still have all that to do. And on this back door, I started working on it. This is the hardest because all these streaks, it seems like it's thick and thin, and it's hard to get it consistently burned off all the way through. Like right here, you can see where I'm trying to get the green paint off without burning through the old stuff. and we're dealing with the same spot where there's paint missing, and then I'm making the metal shiny. I'm not sure there's any way I can avoid that with trying to sand this stuff off here, but it's working really good. I'm really happy with the way this turned out, because since I sanded off that oxidation, it matches the paint on the cab a lot better than, you know, it looked like this originally, the kind of yellowed, real oxidized look. And up in here, if I can get the door open, there we go. You can see I kind of started mounting the bed. So I welded in these 2 cross members. I've only done 2, just enough to bolt the bed down, and drilled through here, and I cut a big hole through here to put the bolt down to the bottom of the tube, because I'm going to be putting plywood on top of here, so I wanted to leave it flat. But I have to make some brackets up here in the front, and I have to do another one back there in the back of the frame. But this bed is mounted pretty solid, enough to where I could drive it. And then we found out that problem with the engine, with the oil being a little thin. When it gets thin, oil pressure gets a little low. And you know, kind of when I started this engine, or got this project, if you remember, it had a bunch of sludge in the bottom, which typically when you see sludge in the bottom of the oil pan, it's from someone not doing maintenance or not changing their oil, and that oil gets real thick and turns to sludge. But on this case, I think it was some of that, but I also think it was just from sitting for 30 years, and it was able to settle all the contaminants out at the bottom and just build up in the bottom, because once you got through that layer of sludge, there was, you know, the oil looked decent, and then on top of that. But it could be a combination of the two, of not changing oil and setting and allowing all that sludge to fall down to the bottom and set in the bottom and set up in the bottom real thick. But I had a lot of comments about, not a lot, I had a few comments of people saying that I should go ahead and pull the pan and clean all that out and all of that stuff. And yes, you are correct. But on this engine, all I wanted to do was get it running and see if it was going to be even a runner. You know, it could have had rod knock. It could have had a bad head gasket. It could have had, you know, the piston rings were shot and the thing had blow by and didn't have enough compression to even run. You know, all of those things could have still been happening because I hadn't even heard the thing run. So the main goal of all that, to just try to get all that sludge flushed out, the reason I didn't pull the engine right then and clean the pan was I just wanted to hear the thing run, because as it turns out, you know, it's kind of tired, it's a little limber, and has a low oil pressure when the thing gets hot. So, you know, I didn't want to spend all the time pulling the engine, cleaning the oil pan out, putting it back in, and then running it, and then finding that problem later. Which I guess you could argue that when I pulled the engine, I could have checked the bearing and found this out before, and we'd be, you know, miles ahead than where we are now without the waste of time of getting all this work into this engine to now just yank it out. But I guess there's different ways of doing it. I didn't want to have the extra labor of pulling that engine out if I didn't have to. But that moves us on to this. So when I found the problem with that engine, the debate was kind of, well, I guess it's time to pull that engine out and do something with it. You know, I could either clean the sludge out of the bottom, put some bearings in it, and you know, call it good that way. But then you still have the cam bearings to deal with. So do you pull the cam out and change the cam bearings? And if you do that, you might as well pull the pistons out, hone the cylinders if you can, if there's not enough ridge, or, you know, bore it out, put pistons in it, rings. And then if you do that, you might as well do a head job so the valves are all good. And it really, you know, it snowballs. And then you got a whole new rebuild engine in it to put in it, which would be good, but just cost a lot more. And, you know, this truck, as cool as it is, I don't expect it to be worth great big bucks at the end of the day. So you got to be careful about how much you put into something, as long as, you know, if you're doing it for profit anyway. If you're just doing it for fun, I guess your profit is the enjoyment you get out of it. But I'm doing this for profit because I have to pay the bills around here. So, you know, that's just how the world works. But yesterday, this thing popped up on the marketplace, and it was a 240 engine, takeout engine. It looked like it was in really good shape, and it was cheap enough. It was like almost cheap enough that the cost of this engine would cover the bearings for that one, just the bearings. So yeah, it was good enough that I went ahead and went and picked it up. And lucky enough, it came out of a very low mile. It's about a 40,000 mile super original truck. If you can see here, let's see, the alternator has an auto light sticker on it, and even the starter has an auto light sticker still on the starter. And carburetor here, it's got the auto light tag on the carburetor. So, and it still has the heat riser on the exhaust manifold. So just a really complete, really nice, clean 240 engine. And it also has a MP435, which is another reason I went and picked it up, which I think it's pretty common, or not common, to have a new process transmission on a half ton, especially behind a 240. But yeah, it has that new process transmission. It's going to be in really good shape as well because it's low miles and it's behind a 240, which doesn't make a ton of horsepower to be able to hurt that transmission. And we'll be able to put that in a highboy. I think my dad's going to use it on a highboy he's building. So we got to split the cost of this engine. He gets the transmission. I get the 240. The only downside to this engine, I don't know if you can really call it a downside. I guess if you're just getting really picky, you could call it a downside, is it's a 68, not a 67. So there's things like the distributor is different. Actually, looking at it now, it might be the same distributor if it's the early distributor still. But the carburetor is different and stuff like that. But I think I'm not really happy with that carburetor we put on that engine, so I might be using this original Autolite as long as it's still in good shape. He said it was a really good runner before they took it out. Now, this truck was a really, really nice truck, really good survivor truck. And the reason he's getting this, or they pulled this engine out, is because it's getting a Coyote swap. So it's getting a modern drivetrain, updating it from the 240, which makes sense. You know, these 240s are kind of, they're not much of a hot rod. So if that's what you're after, you're definitely not looking for a 240. So anyway, we're going to get this 240 unloaded here, get it in the shop, and then we'll kind of poke around and see what we got with it. Oh, we're not going to have enough. Oh. Let's see. There we go. Ratchet straps hanging up. Oh, that would have came off. Why didn't you guys say something? Figure we might as well go over here and steam clean it while we got the thing off out of the shop, picked up with forklift. Get my parking brake set here for my forklift. So yeah, got the thing out. You can see that sticker there. That's pretty neat. You don't see those Autolite stickers because, you know, alternators aren't meant to last 50 years. Same thing with the starter, although that one is not very legible. And they have, looks like duct tape around their clamp here that holds this cover here. Not sure what was going on there, but something was going on. Got our heat riser there with the little diverter valve thing that opens up when it gets hot. That's what that little spring is. I really haven't got to peek around on this engine very much. I haven't even looked at the dipstick. I'm sure it's got oil, you know, good clean oil in it. The 435 looks like it's going to be pretty good shape. Here you can see some of the orange paint under the grease. I'm sure we get this cleaned off, there'll be a bunch of nice orange paint underneath that. So I'm gonna get this thing cleaned off, and then I got to make the decision: do I paint the engine or just throw it in as is? But first, let's get it cleaned off and see what it looks like. All right, well, I got it cleaned off, kind of. I didn't really get too carried away with the steam cleaning. You can see here the part number on the transmission. This is something I haven't seen before. This is a handwritten part number here with the stamp you normally see here, but this part looks like it's handwritten, maybe P-32. Not exactly sure. You get too carried away with the steam cleaner and it just blows off all the paint that's on it. So, you know, I didn't get too carried away with it. But NCN something maybe, I'm not quite sure, or maybe that's a 3. N3, N, and then can't read that last one unfortunately. But yeah, that handwritten part number, or handwritten thing there, whatever it is, was pretty neat to see. Haven't seen that before. But the engine, it didn't really clean up all that great and easy. This side definitely looks better than the other side. But you can see here the paint is for sure thin, and not the best looking. And over here the tappet cover looks all nice and clean, but then right here the paint's completely missing. And this stuff, if I got after it with steam cleaner, just blow the paint off. And same thing down here at the transmission, or the oil pan, it was blowing the paint off. So I decided just to quit where I was at before I made it look worse. And I'll just probably set it in the shop and make up my mind. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with it yet, if we're going to be painting it or just going to be putting it in as is. I guess I'll have to make up my mind. But I'm deep into the motorhome full drive conversion project right now. So I'm probably going to just set this on the back burner for now and kind of decide what I want to do with it as far as the reconditioning of the engine goes before I put it in the truck. Well, probably the next thing you'll see here on this video, I'm going to be pulling the engine out of the Bell truck. I'm not sure when I'm going to be doing that actually in the timeline of everything we're doing, since I'm deep in that motorhome project. But for now, we'll just mothball this thing and we'll catch back up with it when I get back on it. All right, guys, well, I pulled the Bell truck in here and I'm getting ready to pull the engine out of it. I'm at a stopping point on the motorhome conversion project. We're waiting on some parts on that thing, and I have maybe a week, maybe not a full week to devote to the Bell truck here. So I thought I might see how far I could get along with this engine swap deal we're doing. And been kind of up in the air about the inner fenders and like I said earlier in the video, painting the engine. And I think I came up with a plan. So my plan is to completely blow apart the front end. I really didn't want to do that because we have the front end blown apart on the motorhome. We have the front end blown apart on a project my dad's working on here. And we have the front end blown apart on the Ultimate Crew Cab back there. So we have lots of stuff just floating around the shop that we're having to find places for. It's getting kind of full in here. But hopefully this one is not going to be blown apart for very long. I'm going to take the fenders and grill out and everything so I can paint the inner fenders. I had considered doing just like rattle can painting the inner fenders while I have the engine out, just kind of making them a little bit better. But I just struggle with how to make that look right and not just like you rattle canned it, you know, basically. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take everything apart, strip this down, and scuff the inner fenders and prime and paint them. Do it the right way so they look as best as possible. And we'll paint the, you know, the hood hinges and stuff like that. And I want to paint the core support. And we're going to leave all the patina on the original, you know, grill and stuff, obviously. But I want to take this apart and paint it. And we have some rust under the battery tray on this side. I might see if I have a better inner fender and just replace that one instead of trying to fix it. If not, we'll fix the rust on that side. But that's the plan. So we're going to pull the front end apart and yank the engine out. I have a different transmission I think I'm going to put in this thing that's going to be better condition. and obviously the new engine. And I've been working on the engine over here, so I wanted to show you guys just kind of what I'm working with here, and why basically I decided not to paint the thing was because it cleaned up really, really nice. So here's the engine. This is the original paint, and I did clean it. I took it all apart. Well, not all apart, but I took like as much as I could take off easily, put degreaser on it, scrubbed it with a brush and a drill, and then steam cleaned it. And, you know, trying to be very delicate not to ruin the paint that's there. The oil pan is the worst of it, but it's on the bottom, so I think it's going to hide it okay. But yeah, this thing cleaned up really, really nice. We still have to change things, like I'll probably put my new fuel pump on it, even though that one's probably the original. And the new ignition parts we put in the old one, I'll be putting that in this one as well, you know, on spark plugs, that kind of stuff. But yeah, this thing turned out really nice and nice and clean, so I decided not to paint it. But, oh, here's the transmission I want to put in it. That thing, I cleaned that one up too. But the inner fenders was the big thing that I was kind of up in the air about, whether I wanted to pull the front end apart or not. And basically just boiled down to, I want to do it right. So we're just blowing everything apart. I can replace all the bolts and get everything painted, and it'll look nice and clean and fresh. So we just did that on the motorhome. I'm not going to bother filming it on this truck. I'm going to go ahead and knock that out, get this thing yanked out of here, and I'll catch up with you guys once I start going back together and getting the engine ready to go in. All right, guys, engine is out of the truck. I spent all day yesterday, all afternoon, pulling the front end apart and yanked the engine out this morning. Went out pretty easy. We pulled the transmission and engine together because these 3 speeds are so tiny. It didn't cause us any problems. Got that thing out of there. And gonna take the chassis outside here and steam clean everything while I have it all exposed. We have a bunch of grime here on the cross members under the transmission, so that thing was leaking. And also gonna clean up the firewall a little bit better, and obviously the chassis here where we have it exposed and around the steering gear, it's pretty greasy. So I'm gonna clean all that up while I have it nice and easy to get to. We got to pull some things off of the engine, some stuff that I replaced, like the belts, the spark plug wires, fuel pump probably, you know, that kind of stuff since I replaced it. One thing I noticed whenever I had this thing out was it's missing one of the bolts here. So kind of questionable about who did the engine out on this thing, or if they just forgot that bolt or if it fell out. I do know this engine is remanufactured. You see down here on this tag, this is Fred Jones of Oklahoma City. They were a big remanufacturer back in the day, and I think I saw 11 right here and a 75 right here. So this might have been remanufactured in 75. I don't really know for sure, but that's just kind of my guess since I saw that 75 number stamped in the side there. And if you notice, the engine on this thing is green. The engine and head are green. So I don't know if this was like in some piece of equipment and they remanufactured it, you know, some power unit for some equipment or something. And that green just showed up and they didn't paint it or something of that nature. I don't really know. But I'm going to get this thing out and get it cleaned up. And then we got to get to painting the inner fenders. You can see here the passenger side one does have quite a bit of rot under the battery tray. I didn't realize it was that bad. So I'm definitely going to see if I can find a better inner fender on that one. But we'll get that painted up and then we'll be going back together. All right, I have the engine ready to go in. Did everything, swapped all the stuff over on this engine I want to use, you know, like spark plugs and the fuel pump, and put new belts on it and that kind of stuff. Put a new thermostat in it. I did pull the bell housing out and check the clutch. The clutch looked great, so we're leaving that alone. And I did repaint the transmission. This isn't the one I talked about earlier. Since this is a short bed truck, it has a slip yoke on the drive shaft, and that other transmission was out of a long bed truck, so it had a 2-piece drive shaft with a yoke on the back and nose slip joint on the transmission. So there's nothing wrong with this transmission. It was just rusty and ugly, so I just went ahead and painted it and just kind of dressed it up a little bit. And yeah, we'll see if we can get this thing stabbed in here. I have everything ready to go. I did take the transmission crossmember out. I left that in when I took it out, but went ahead and pulled it out just so we can go in it easier. It sounds like UPS is here, so I'm going to go grab whatever that is, and then we'll stab this engine in. All right, let's see if we can get this engine stabbed in here. Hopefully you guys can see all right. Sorry, kind of limited equipment here to get you guys the best angle. And especially being solo here in the shop kind of makes it harder to get you guys the best view when I'm actually deep into working on stuff. But hopefully you guys get enough out of this you can kind of see what's going on. Hopefully I have this engine dangled down enough to get it in there. We are currently hitting the floor with the top of the transmission. Too much. Ugh. Wheels on my cherry picker are kind of, there we go. My wheels are hanging up on me. That motor mount is in. One thing about these 300s, you get or 6 cylinders, I guess this isn't a 300, you get a lot more room here. All right, that's in. Now I'm going to get a floor jack under there, and we'll get the transmission cross member in, and this thing will be installed. All right, floor jack is going to get in my way, so I'm going to do something. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to block it up with this block of wood on this cross member here. If I can do them both at the same, I can pick it up high enough for sure with both hands. I don't know if I can do it. I don't think that's near high enough. Yeah, we need to go quite a bit more. Oh, there went my block. This isn't working the best. We probably should just get the floor jack and be done with it. There, that should do it. I'm gonna go ahead and get the bolts in before I get the weight on it. Good enough. Hey, it's in there. Get our transmission mount bolt in place. transmission is installed. So I go ahead and throw the speedometer gear in here so it's not hanging down. We can plug up that transmission. All right, transmission is installed. Now we just need to button everything up, and I want to try to fire this engine before we finish everything, just to make sure everything's good with it. I have not heard this engine run. It was sold to me as a good running low mile engine, and it has everything to make me think so. But I still want to verify before we go to all the trouble of putting everything together and something be wrong with it that we'll have to take care of. So I'm going to get to button everything up on this thing, and we'll come back with you guys when I'm ready to fire it up. All right, here we go. I have everything hooked up. It really didn't take much, mainly just the wiring, and I did hook up the exhaust and the fuel lines. I have cranked on it to verify that we do have power to the starter and everything's cranking just fine. I had to add a battery charger to the battery because the battery is low. But we're probably going to have to crank on it because we got to get fuel up to the carburetor because it's probably bone dry. So I'm going to crank on it some. Hopefully we have spark, and we'll see this thing fire off. So I'm going to get to cranking, and we'll see how long it takes. And we don't have a drive shaft in, so we don't have to worry about the thing taking off on us. See if we got any fuel showing up yet. Ooh, we do. Looks like we got a float stuck. Okay. That's a problem. All right. It is just dumping fuel down our intake. We are not going to be starting anytime soon. Thought I had a 1/2 wrench here somewhere. Yep, we got all kinds of fuel pressure. All right. Well, there is no chance of this thing running with all that fuel in there. We might have to give it a go tomorrow because I don't want to deal with taking all the spark plugs out and clearing all that out. All right, I think I got the carburetor unstuck. And while I was cranking on it to verify that, it was trying to fire. So I went ahead and hooked up the throttle linkage. And so I could give it some throttle to help it get some more air to get that fuel mixture out of there. And I also have a big old fire extinguisher handy, just in case we have any kind of backfires or anything like that, since we have quite a bit of fuel in that intake manifold. Let's see if this will work. I don't know if it's going to be able to chew through all that gas there, but let's just give it a shot. Yeah. That is a concerning amount of rattle. I did check and we had oil pressure, or oil. Yeah, we got lots of oil. Let me make sure we got enough. Yeah, it's full of oil. The oil light was off, so that is a little concerning. We'll just let it run a little bit more. Looks like we're not dumping gas anymore, which is good. I do not like that. I don't know why those lifters are clattering so much. I mean, I guess it's possible they could just be stuck, but I don't think this thing's been out and not running very long. I think it's pretty recent this thing was running. The guy I got it from said it was a good running engine. I don't have any reason to doubt him. Seemed like a nice enough guy. You know, it's possible we could just need to run it some more. Now, I don't know why we should have oil light would be on if we didn't have oil pressure. Yeah, it's on now. I'm gonna watch it while I crank it this time. Yeah, it goes off instantly. Well, that is not how I wanted this to go. That does not sound good. I don't like that at all. I'm going to do some investigating and see what I find. If I find something, I'll let you guys know. Hopefully we're not going to be pulling this engine out. Man, that sucks. I thought this thing was going to fire up and purr like a kitten the way it was looking. Can't all be easy. I'm going to see what I find. All right, well, I think I have it figured out here on the 240. I did take the valve cover off, but last night, this is the next morning here. Last night, I fiddled around with it, went and took care of some chores and came back and fired up and ran it some more and allowed the thing to get really kind of heat soaked and get the block all good and up to temperature. And I put some Marvel Mystery Oil in the crankcase. And after it finally got up to temperature, it was starting to quiet up a whole lot and was getting a little quieter, but you could still hear a little bit of tick. And so this morning I fired it up and that tick was all the way back. It was full blown back to ticking again. So I thought, well, I'll pull the valve cover off and see what we're looking at there. And I think what we're running into is our rockers are out of adjustment here. I have number one here on the compression stroke. So our lifters are on the base circle on the camshaft and they are both just rattly loose. Let's see if we can find some other here's that are, I mean, I think that's going to be causing our problem there. I mean, we could have bad lifters, I guess, but the chances of all the lifters being bad and the whole engine at the same time, that's kind of not as likely in my mind. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and adjust all these rockers and get them tightened back up. I'm going to do it. You can do this with the engine running, but since I just spent all this time cleaning this engine, I'm not going to want to make a mess on top of here. So I'm going to spin it over and do it by hand. Make sure all the lifters on the base cam of the cam, the lifters are on the base circle of the cam, so we're not, it's not under pressure in any way. And we'll get this thing tightened up. I'm going to do like 1 to 2 turns past 0 lash, just to see if we can get this thing quietened up, and we'll see how that works out. All right, so I got the valve cover button back up. I adjusted those valves. It took several tries to get it right, being that this is my first time doing this. So I just fiddled around with it until it stopped ticking. It probably would have taken a lot less time if I would have done it with the engine running and the valve cover off. But with the fan here and me not wanting to get the engine all oily and stuff, I just elected to do it trial and error method, which was just, you know, giving it some more, giving it some less until it started sounding good. And I did do some playing around with the carburetor. That float stuck on me again, so I took the top off the carburetor and messed with that needle in the seat and tried to lubricate it and work it a lot. And Put some B12 in there to try to clean up that needle, keep it from sticking. We'll see if we have to rebuild the carburetor. Hopefully not. But I think I have it tuned up pretty good. Might have a little bit too much timing in it. It's wanting to kick the starter a little bit, but I think that's running pretty good. Idle might be a little low. I'll adjust on that idle some, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. That's running pretty good. So, I guess next step is going to be to button everything up in here, get the shifters and stuff from drive shaft back in, and that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to paint the inner fenders and get those started, assemble all that stuff, and then we can put the whole thing back together and get back on the road. Well, everybody, thanks for sticking around. We got this new to this truck, 240, stuck in this Southwestern Bell service truck, and got it tuned up and running good. Since we had that little problem with the rockers being a little loose, this video took a little bit longer than I expected. It ended up being a little bit longer. So I think we're going to do the inner fenders on a different video, plus the motor mounts for the 7.3 Power Stroke that I'm putting in the Mitchell motorhome back there are showing up relatively quick. So I got to get that 7.3 out, get it cleaned up, get it ready to stab in here so we can do fitment on that thing. And we might be doing this in weeks down the road. So I'm going to end up doing those on a separate video. We're going to end this one off with the 240 in here and running really well now. I'm really happy with the way that thing sounds considering how it started. But anyway, guys, if you want to see more on this truck and see me finish that Mitchell motorhome back there, give me a subscribe, give me a thumbs up if you like this truck. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.